everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you can see today, I have a guest on with me. We're here just to talk a little bit more about type 1 diabetes, our stories of living with type 1 diabetes. So first, for all of the other guests who don't know me, my name is Samantha Farley. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I was actually diagnosed with type 1 diabetes on February 18th, 2021. So it actually hasn't even been 2 years yet, almost 2 years. So yeah.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Breanne, and I was diagnosed with diabetes when I was 18 months old. So I've been living with the disease since 1997. So you could definitely do the math and probably figure out my age from there. But so I am so excited to be here, so excited to connect with Samantha and all of you. It's just amazing, this whole community and all the amazing people I've met through here. But yeah, I'm so excited to get to know Samantha, her story, even her just being diagnosed so recently. And also too, like how our diagnosis stories are probably going to be different, but yet the same. So I'm excited to, learn more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I can go into a little bit of my diagnosis story. So I actually, and this is to the doctors, this is what they say. I actually had COVID 3 months prior to being diagnosed, which is what they think happened and how it caused me to get type 1. And ironically, I started having, the crazy symptoms. First, I was getting really tired. I lost about 20 pounds in 2 weeks. I had really, really bad leg pain. I would get like Charlie horses every single night in my calves. It was so bad. And then I started losing my eyesight. So that was kind of the last straw for me where I was like, okay, I need to go see my primary care doctor. And the funny part of this is I actually tried to schedule an appointment with her, but she was booked. So I went to Puerto Rico literally right before I was diagnosed, and I was chugging pina coladas, which, if you don't know, are filled with sugar. So that was probably not the best idea, but I didn't know at the time. But anyway, so when I got back from Puerto Rico, I went to my primary care. She had no idea. I told her all the symptoms. She had no idea what was wrong. So she just said, you know what, let's just run a bunch of blood tests, see what's going on. Uh, the next day, my blood test came back and my blood sugar numbers were 420. So she wanted me to go to the ER immediately. So I did. Um, I was in the ER for 2 days. I had DKA, and thankfully, I guess it was only 2 days. I've heard a lot of stories of people having to be there for weeks. So I'm really happy that I only had to be there for 2 days. But it was such a shock for me. I mean, when they told me I had type 1, I had no idea what it even was. I think I maybe knew one person that had it, but I wasn't even close with her. So I didn't really know what that meant. So yeah, it was life changing for sure.
Wow. I mean, just the whole thing with like pina coladas, like I can only imagine your blood sugar and being so thirsty. So, like, for those of you who don't know, when your blood sugar is high, one of the symptoms is thirst. Like, you are thirsty. And to hear like pina coladas and high blood sugar is not the greatest combination whatsoever. But I mean, thankfully you caught it. Like, even at 420, like, yes, that blood sugar is high, but like, thankfully you caught it at that moment before it got
Right.
higher, and being in DKA for 2 days. Like, that's some scary stuff. And especially during COVID, like, I can't even imagine even being inside a hospital during that time. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
thankfully my boyfriend at the time was able to visit me because I didn't know if he was going to be able to, but thankfully, we were past that like really bad stage, so they still let him come in, but it was still only for a few hours a day. So
Wow. So what was the education like? So being like newly diagnosed, like when they told you like you had type 1 diabetes, like what was like your instant reaction to that? Like I know you said briefly like you heard of it, you knew somebody who had it, but what was like your thought process?
I was so overwhelmed, and I kind of blame the ER doctors and education people there because I literally went into the ER room. Within 15 minutes, they brought in a diabetes educator. And I'm not even kidding. The first thing she said to me was that I probably can't have kids. And I started bawling my eyes out because one, I didn't even know what type 1 was. And then two, she's telling me I can't have children. And so it was terrible, honestly. And so Yeah, that part wasn't great. After I got out of the hospital, though, I would say it did get better because I was able to actually go to an endocrinologist and get like a real diabetes educator. So that was better. But during the hospital visit, it wasn't great.
I can't even imagine getting that news. Like, I feel for you right now. Like, being a young woman, like hearing like you have type 1 diabetes, you can't have kids. Like, oh my God, like, hold on, like, back it up a notch. Like, what is type 1? Like, that is wild. I can't even imagine how
Yeah.
overwhelming that was for you. So, when you saw the endocrinologist and like the diabetes educators, did you get like more clarity around it? Did it start to become like a little less overwhelming for you?
Absolutely. And they told me, by the way, if there's any ladies out here who want to have children, you can have
Yeah.
kids. That was a lie. You are able to. It might be more difficult than someone without type 1, but you still can. So that's important to know.
Mhm.
But yeah, so they helped a ton. And honestly, when you're a new diabetic, it's a lot of trial and error. So I figured out a lot of it on my own, just, taking insulin and then going low and being like, oh crap, I took too much. Like that's just how you learn that way. The other thing that really helped, honestly, was finding other people with type 1 on social media. Uh, that honestly maybe helped me more than any of the doctors did. And so that's why I'm also so able to talk about this online, because I want to help other people that are newly diagnosed, because I know doctors aren't the best necessarily.
Wow, I give you so much credit. Honestly, you're so courageous to share your story because it took me 25 years to really be open with it. So like a little bit about me. I was diagnosed when I was 18 months old. So I don't remember my symptoms or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's really hard for me to share my story, but I get my story from my mother. And I always talk based on like, I'm able to kind of really relate to almost like the parents who have children with type 1 diabetes because I saw everything like my mom and dad did for me as a child. So my mom told me that I was crying a lot. Again, I was 18 months old, crying a lot, sleeping in my high chair. And she just knew something was wrong. Again, at the time, she, had two younger nephews she would take care of. So she knew like there's something wrong here. So what she did was she took me to the doctor, and the doctor told her that she was a paranoid first parent and that I was teething. And my mom, thankfully at the time, did not take that as an answer because, like, I can't even imagine, don't even want to imagine if they were to listen, if she was to listen to the doctor at that time. So then she took me to the emergency room. I don't know the exact number, but my blood sugar, she said, was through the roof. It was very high. And at the time, again, this is in 1997. Sorry about that. So again, this is in 1997. So again, she really didn't hear much about type 1 diabetes, or we had nobody in my family with diabetes, nobody with type 2 diabetes. So that was just like a whole nother realm. And so at the time, again, I was 18 months old. My mom also had a 2-week-old baby because again, my brother and I are 18 months apart.
Oh
So
my God.
my mom would be at the hospital with me at during the day, and then at night go home and take care of my little brother. So it was just a lot for her and just so much to learn. She told me that one of the nurses, they went food shopping with her and
Wow.
I guess showed her around and what I can eat, what I can't eat, all that kind of stuff. But thankfully, my mom, like growing up, really normalized it for me. Like as a kid, like I am so thankful I had this mindset of it can always be worse. Like I remember in school where I had, like a classmate who was deaf, another classmate who had something else going on. And so, like, thankfully at that age I was able to not like almost like compare but to like think in my mind like it can always be worse kind of thing. Again, like if you're going through something, like again, there's no comparison whatsoever where like everyone's situation like is their situation. But at that time, being a kid, that was just my thought process, and my mom again really normalized it. Like I know Halloween's approaching, so as a kid, like Halloween, candy, diabetes, you hear all these different things. I was able to eat all this kind of stuff. Like my mom allowed me to, if I went to a birthday party, to have a cupcake. I think
Yep.
there's so much misconceptions about diabetes that I won't get into in this video, but thankfully my mom really normalized that for me as a kid. At the time, I was taking like 6 needles a day, testing my blood sugar. There was no insulin pump. There was no Dexcom at the time. I remember middle of the night, my mom testing my blood sugar because I wasn't feeling well and like all that kind of stuff. I can't even imagine like the worry like of her like when I go out and like not being able to like nowadays, like thankfully parents can like look at like their child's blood sugar on their phone, which is
Mm,
like absolutely amazing.
yes.
Yeah, so that's like kind of my story where it was
Right.
just like I don't remember the adjustment period. Like I don't know life without diabetes, and I'm almost thankful for that because I can't even imagine. I give like so much credit to you, Samantha, and all the newly diagnosed, young adults, children, or anybody newly diagnosed where they had to make lifestyle changes. So much credit because I can't even imagine again, like kind of what you were saying before, like how overwhelming that could be because this is like all I know, which is wild.
Yeah. I'm curious if any other people with diabetes feel this way though. So the first year was brutal for me, like just, changing things. But now I truly don't remember what it's like just to eat something. Like I really don't. And it hasn't even been 2 years. So now I'm wondering if like other people feel the same or if they still remember like, man, I wish I could go back. But it's just, that's how quickly I feel like you learn diabetes though, because you have to. But I also give you credit because it breaks my heart to hear about little kids who have type 1 diabetes because I think growing up is hard enough as it is. And then throwing that in is just, it's horrible and I hate it. But
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was really my teenage years. When you're a teenager going into high school, at least for me, very like self-conscious with who you're hanging out with, what you're doing, what people think of you, even as an adult still. Like that's just like our human nature. And like for me, I was very self-conscious about my insulin pump. Like, oh, this thing's attached to me. Like it's different. Like, and all those types of things. Looking back, I wish I had like the Instagram, all this different
yeah,
support then where it's like, okay, like in this community, like it lets you know like you're not alone. Like, which is like amazing because, it's really easy to feel alone and like, different because you have to check your blood sugar before you eat and you have to make sure you give yourself insulin where you're working as your pancreas. Like you're taking on the role of an organ and like nobody was trained how to do that. Like there wasn't like this textbook on, how to be a pancreas. Like there's
right, right.
so much to learn. So yeah.
And no one else really gets it. They try to, like my family and my friends try to, but they don't and they never will, honestly. So that's hard too.
So when you were diagnosed, you said you had a boyfriend. So how was that for him? Like, like learning about it? Were you guys learning together or how did that all go?
He is super, super supportive. It was hard for him too because he also only had one friend growing up that had it, so he didn't know anything either. So we both had to learn, and he was super great about it. Like he would be with me all the time. He has my Dexcom numbers on his phone too, so he's
Okay.
my fiance now. So yeah, so he's super great about all of it, and I feel bad for him too because he's going through a lot through me, like almost like a parent would. Thankfully, I can take care of myself. Like he doesn't have to do it for me, which a parent would, but he still, takes the heat a lot too.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing how supportive he is. I can say the same thing with my fiance. So supportive. He has the Dexcom app on his phone too. I'll be
Good.
at work and he'll be texting me, Breanne, your blood sugar's going up. There's a two up arrows. I'm like, all right, thank you. I know. He worries a lot, which is fine, but we've talked about it. Like, don't worry, Angelo. I got it under control, but I appreciate it, and I think again, like what you were saying, it's so important to have a significant other and that your partner is supportive because yes, it's a lot for us, but I agree with you too. It's, like our significant others are also going through it with us where, there's worry for them as well.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, like because he was my boyfriend before I was diagnosed, so
Okay.
he stuck with me. So like, how was dating for you? Like, was that nerve-wracking or like, how did that work?
Really good question. So, Angela and I, we were actually talking about it recently where I'm like, do you remember when I told you I was diabetic? He was like, no, you never talked about it. Again, so me and Angela, we met when we were 14. So at that time, I'm sorry, 17, not, we started talking at 14. So we met, everything dating and stuff at 17. And, he said, I just remember you taking out this pink thing out of your pocket. And I thought it was like a Tamagotchi or something. I was like, so for those of you who don't know, like Tamagotchis, like there were like these little like gadgets back then, and like I don't know, it's like a toy, like a game. And so I took out my insulin pump, and he was looking at it, then he saw there was a wire, but he didn't want to ask questions. I guess at the time maybe I was giving myself insulin. I don't remember exactly, but he goes, but then I saw this wire, so I'm like, I guess it's medical, but I'm not gonna ask. And then he saw that I was testing myself. And then I think it just kind of came up very naturally, like I have diabetes. It was when I went low and I needed sugar. And I told Angela, I'm like, I'm not feeling well. I'm feeling very shaky. He's like, all right, your blood sugar's low. Like, what do I need to do? All this kind of stuff. And then he ended up getting me a Gatorade and all that kind of
So
stuff.
sweet.
Yeah. So like it was very like a natural almost transition where I didn't flat out say, hey, just so you know, I'm type 1 diabetic. I think it just kind of naturally happened. Again, I was 17 at the time. So I guess everyone, story's different and how you do share it. But I think it is important to share it with your significant other in case, God forbid, of a medical emergency. And they are aware and know what to do in case something does happen. Like for me going low, like thankfully I was able to communicate that to him, like my blood sugar's low. So he get me something.
And if they're not supportive, they're probably not a good one. So
yeah, out the door. Bye. Next. Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
So for technology, what do you use now?
So I am on the insulin pump and I use a Dexcom.
Okay, which pump?
Yeah, so I am on the T-Slim insulin pump. Yep. So I got the insulin pump in 4th grade. From there, I had an Omnimos insulin pump. I don't even know if they make those anymore.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, I guess they don't. And then from Omnimos to Medtronic to now T-Slim. I got the T-Slim because I wanted to connect with the Dexcom. So recently on the Dexcom for about maybe a little over a year now. So fairly new.
Oh, wow. Okay. And you like T-Slim?
Yes, I do. I like both of them. Again, I like it. It is slim, so it does live up by its name. It's comfortable, and yeah, I have no complaints about it. So as long as I'm able to manage my diabetes, that's all that matters.
Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome.
And what about you? What are you using?
So Dexcom, right when I was diagnosed, I was put on that immediately. So I didn't really have, I have, like a pricker, but I rarely use it. I was put on Dexcom immediately, which is really nice. I love it. And then I still am on MDI actually. So multiple daily injections. I've been on that since I was diagnosed. And it's funny because everyone always asks me, they're like, when are you going to switch to a pump? But honestly, I'm managing it fine. So like right now I'm like, do I need to switch? Like I probably will eventually, but right now it's fine. So
yeah, I think that's great too, how we have so many different options to take care of ourselves. Whether it's MDI, I run an insulin pump. There's the Omnipod insulin pump, which is wireless. And I think it's really all personal preference, to be honest, and whatever works for you,
Yeah. Yeah. And I like it, honestly.
Yeah.
So I've heard like if I want to get pregnant and when I want to get pregnant, it's probably best to get on a pump of some sort just because it helps manage it better than MDI would. So maybe then, but we'll see.
That's awesome. What I like about the insulin pump is the basal rates and how the Dexcom communicates with my insulin pump. So like, let's say my blood sugar is going higher than normal, my insulin pump will like connect with my Dexcom and be able to communicate with one another and give me insulin that way. So that was
it automatically does it for you?
It automatically does it. Yeah.
Nice. That's so nice.
Yeah. It's my little pancreas.
Do you want to stay on T-Slim or have you ever like maybe switch or?
I do, but I have been looking into Omnipod. I'm someone who likes to try different things and like I'm not going to knock it until I try it. So definitely something I am looking maybe to possibly transition over in the future.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear if you ever do, like the differences, because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But yeah, I'll definitely let you know for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. So if someone was just recently diagnosed, like what's maybe 1 or 2 tips you would give them just to learn more about diabetes?
I would say let go of control. You can't always control the disease. Again, we can't fully control, how our bodies are going to react to certain things. So many different factors play into diabetes. It's not like food is the only thing that does. Stress, the temperature, believe it or not, all these different factors play a role when it comes to managing diabetes. And all you could do is the best. You could do the best you could with carb counting, making sure you give yourself enough insulin and to not be so hard on yourself. Again, like what I was saying earlier, you're playing the role of an organ in your body that's supposed to work and it's not. And I think it's so important to almost let go of that control. And if your blood sugar goes a little high, like it's okay. Take your insulin. It'll be okay. Like, as long as you know what you have to do to take care of it. And also A1C, you know, A1C doesn't dictate the type of person you are. You're not a bad person if your A1C, you know, was a little higher, you know, this month compared to 3 months ago. Like, it's okay. Take a look at it and just ask yourself, like, what do I need to improve on for next time? What can I work on? And like, it's okay. Like, again, we're not perfect. We're not robots. Like, we're
Yeah.
not, you know, like, it's things are going to come up, things are going to happen. We're only human at the end of the day. But honestly, you know, work very close with your team. Just like Samantha was saying, like a support system. I think a support system, especially in the beginning, even now for me, again, I lived with this disease my whole life, and a support system is everything.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, diabetes is not easy, so it's okay to make mistakes, you know, and learn from them. I think that's the key. Like, it's okay. Just make sure you're learning, like, why did that happen? Go
Yeah.
back and figure out why that happened. And then I think the piece of advice I would give is the last thing you said is the support system is huge.
Mhm.
And yes, obviously listen to what your doctor has to say, but also take that with a grain of salt because they're so used to the educational aspect of it, and your endocrinologist or your doctor may not have type 1 themselves. So I think it's also important to find other people who have type 1 so you can compare the information. Like, take what your doctor said and then ask the people that have type 1 their opinion too, and then you know, make your own decision based on that, because if you only listen to one or the other, it may not be the best fit for you yourself as a type 1 diabetic.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and I can't agree with you any more than that. So
Yeah, awesome. Is there anything else you want to add to our topics today for our audience?
I think that's it. I think we covered a lot. And again, I'm so happy to have connected with you. I'm just learning so much. Again, like I was diagnosed at 18 months old. I still don't know everything. I'm still learning so much. I'm still attending seminars and just seeing what else is out there because, especially YouTube, it's such a great platform. Like, I like Instagram, yes, but I feel like YouTube is a whole nother realm where you really get to know the person behind the pictures, and
Yep.
it just takes it to like a whole nother level where like diabetes isn't picture perfect. And I think a lot of the times we could see that on Instagram where, you know, where you only see like the highs of people, as in like, you know, like the top of it, like not the top, but like their highlights. That's what I meant. So like the highlights and everything going well, where in the real world, every day is not going to go so well. Diabetes to me, if I had to explain it, it's a roller coaster where you're going to have ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like YouTube, at least for me, was such a great platform to learn, to follow other YouTubers just like Samantha, and just really, you know, get out there and just keep learning. And I think that worked for me.
I agree. It's easier to share information to on YouTube. Like Instagram, there's only so much you can say. There's only so much time for the
Yeah.
videos. At least YouTube, we can do things like this, like collab and like share more details about type 1. So
Awesome.
yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining, and everyone, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everyone.